Okay, nobody wants to be the panelist that's like 20 minutes past the projected. So thank you all for being here. As Adira said, my name is Molly Brummond. I'm the current chair of the board for the ACLU of Nebraska. And I have cried like 5 times tonight, so bear with me as I pull it together. So the first question that I have for you, Deborah or Mindy, is we have talked about and celebrated the past of the ACLU of Nebraska, the last 60 years. I'm curious what you think are the focus areas that will carry us through the next 10, 20, the next 60 years. I'm starting.
That's a great question, Molly. Well, at the ACLU of Nebraska, particularly as we were preparing for our anniversary event, we have dug in to the past 60 years. And as we've all been kind of talking about, this work is generational, and we are still engaged in the work that we had been engaged in originally 60 years ago. And so I don't see us pivoting away from LGBTQ plus rights, bodily autonomy, reproductive freedom, immigrants' rights, voting rights, racial justice and indigenous justice. Like, I don't see us pivoting away from those priority issue areas. But what I see us leaning into is more being in the community and doing the organizing work that we've all touched on tonight, and the importance of not resting everything on the court system. Litigation is not going to stop a democratic backslide, but being in the streets and in community with all of you will. And so I do see us not losing that, but amplifying that moving forward.
Yeah, so I have not cried a million times. I'm from New York, and so I'm just like, maybe it's hardened, but it has been lovely to hear from the clients and to hear the work. In terms of what will remain the same, I think folks know that the work of the ACLU covers the waterfront, and I think it's going to continue to do that. Part of what we do at the ACLU is rise to the moment, and that means different things at different times. So our work has always been about First Amendment. It's been important since day one. It will continue to be important. Our work has always been about racial justice. A lot of people think that that's a new area for us, but in our second year, we published a pamphlet talking about how racial justice work was going to be central to who we were. Thurgood Marshall was on our board. We were counsel in one of the Brown versus Board of Education cases. Always been important to us. Criminal legal system reform, always been important to us. We were one of the counsel in Miranda. Everyone knows that they get to read their Miranda rights. That was the ACLU as a part of that. We are part of Loving versus Virginia. What we do today has been core to who we are for over 100 years, and it will always be. But rising to the moment means different areas of our work will take center stage. After the Palmer raids, we had to rise to that moment. After 9/11, the ACLU rose to that moment with a focus on religious liberty. After the Voting Rights Act was originally gutted, with Section 5 being gutted, we rose to the moment and focused on protecting the right to vote. When we saw the wave of anti-trans legislation around the country, the ACLU rose to the moment and stepped in to do that work. And we're rising to the moment today. During this first Trump administration, we took seriously everything he said he was going to do when he got elected. And so that meant that we were ready on day one. And as you all know, one of his first acts was to sign an executive order attempting to rewrite the 14th Amendment and say that there was, birthright citizenship didn't mean what it meant. And within hours, we filed our first legal action against this administration. That executive order has never gone into effect because of that work. And since then, we have filed almost 300 legal actions against this administration. And so that is what rising to this moment looks like, leaning in to protecting the vulnerable communities that he is focused on. It means leaning in to stop the abuse of authority, the undermining of power centers, the trying to gut racial justice work. So, so we'll always do the work that's important to this organization that has been important for 100 years. What I will say is that will look different. Racial justice work during the time of Brown versus Board of Education looked different than racial justice work during 2020 and after George Floyd was murdered, and racial justice work looks different today. It will look different following the Supreme Court's decision in Calais, gutting the other important component of the Voting Rights Act. First Amendment work looks different than it did following the Palmer raids, and then following the Black Lives Matter protests, and today where the First Amendment is being weaponized against people who speak out against the administration. So the power of oppression and discrimination is in its ability to adapt and evolve. It finds its way into any spaces and nooks and crannies that we leave for it. So we don't know what it's going to look like to fight for racial justice. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like to fight to protect the First Amendment. We don't know what it will look like to fight to protect bodily autonomy or the right to reproductive rights. But we will do that work, whatever it looks like.
So, Deborah, I'm curious, are there emerging issues that you think we need to be, like, our spidey senses need to be seeking out as we move into the next few years?
So I'm reluctant to say that there is one emerging issue. I think one category of issue I might say is that the ACLU and folks who care about civil rights and civil liberties are often focused on what it looks like to protect an individual's rights, which is incredibly important, right? I have an individual right to housing, and what are you going to do to protect my right to housing? I have a right to work wherever I want to work without discrimination. What are you going to do to protect my right to work? I think more and more that the civil rights and civil liberties issues that are emerging that we're seeing are how we treat communities, how we create communities of opportunity and communities of inopportunity, how we make sure that there are some communities that are denied all the resources that they need to live happy, healthy, and choice-filled lives. And so we have to think about what it means to fight for communities as communities and how we protect those communities. As you heard in my introduction earlier, I wrote a book about the way that we co-opted transportation infrastructure to destroy, to isolate, to divide, to continue segregation, right, as a post-Jim Crow tool. Our interstate highway system, our transportation system more broadly, destroyed whole communities that are still living with the repercussions. And we were not able to kind of repurpose and rethink civil rights in a way that protected those communities. And so in so many ways, I think we have to do that. But more importantly, I think we have to figure out what it means to actually do the work of visioning. A lot of what we are seeing now that we are fighting against was decades in the making. The day after Roe versus Wade was decided, we started to see the work and the seeds planted to get us to the Dobbs decision, right? It's the day after Brown versus Board of Education was decided, we saw massive resistance and a plot to bring us back and keep us segregated. And so I don't want to quote the movie Dune, but I'm going to. In the movie, they say, there's a line that is just one of my favorite lines. They say, our plans are measured in centuries. And we need to start to think about our plans in terms of centuries. We're so focused on how do we defend what we have, and it's important. How do we put out the fires today, and it's important. But we also need to be able to take some time to think about what does justice look like 100 years from now. And what does that mean? What are the building blocks that are going to get us to that point? So we know what we need to do today. What do we need to do a year from now? What do we need to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, to make sure that 100 years from now, we are where we know we should be? We used to do that. Think about Brown versus Board of Education. It wasn't that there was Plessy versus Ferguson and the next day that there was Brown versus Board of Education, and we challenged separate but equal. Brown started with Charles Hamilton Houston and his students at Howard Law School thinking about this idea that separate could never be equal, and then doing the work to turn that idea into a legal reality on the ground. And that took decades. What got us to Brown was a strategy that was built and unraveled over decades. So the work that we have to do is figure out what our plan is over the course of the next decade.
Well, this is not new, but one thing that is real, and it feels real to us at the ACLU and many other folks that are in this work, is, like Deborah mentioned, not necessarily the individual targeting, but the targeting of those that are working for Nebraskans' rights and freedom. So targeting the organizations that are doing the work and the individuals that are doing the work. And that's why it means so much that you're here tonight, because supporting the work of the ACLU is maybe not as easy to talk about as it once was, but it needs to be. And we need to be loud and proud about doing this work. And we need to make sure that the threats against the orgs and the people that are doing this work don't stop the work from happening.
So we only have about 4 minutes left on this, and I want to make sure that I give time to the audience if there's any questions that you have for either Mindy or Deborah. I have questions, but I want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to ask. Does anybody have anything that you'd like to pose? Grant? Okay, shout, Grant.
What do you think, both at the national and our state level, is the best thing happening to the ACLU at this moment? The best thing. For the mic.
Sure. The question was, both at the national level and at the affiliate, what are the best things that are happening in those organizations?
Well, you, Grant Friedman, and the entire team and everybody that's in this room and supporting this work of the ACLU and all of the organizations, the advocates that are doing this work. Like, that's what I think the best thing is. That's what gives me hope, helps me sleep at night, and again, is one of the reasons that I think the ACLU of Nebraska is going to look towards being in community, building that trust and rapport, and showing up when we need to show up.
And in addition to that, I would say it's the people, because it's hard. These are hard days, and I wake up every day feeling inspired and energetic because I have the opportunity to work with the most amazing people at the ACLU who are showing up every day with love and passion and creativity and doing everything they can, leaving nothing on the table to try to fight and protect our rights. I would also say that I love that the way this organization is showing up exactly the way it was built to show up. We're a legal powerhouse organization, and we are demonstrating why it's so important to have both the breadth and depth that we do. We are showing why it's important for us to be a nationwide organization, because we are on the front lines. We are able to address each issue as it happens in every state. When we were fighting the Alien Enemies Act and the invocation of that act, and the Supreme Court said, oh, you can't get that nationwide injunction. Instead, you have to file a habeas petition in every single state where someone is being held. We said, okay, no problem. And we have done that, right? We have this nationwide organization that can do that. I think what is working is that we are an integrated advocacy organization. We are a legal powerhouse, yes, but the law is not going to save us in every respect. It's important for putting out the fires. It's important for frontline protecting people. They're going to be in court, so we have to be ready to be in court too. But we know that it's important to not only do federal litigation, but state litigation. We have a state Supreme Court project. We know it's important to be engaged in the narrative change work, right, to address hearts and minds. We know legislative advocacy is important. We know that protecting and partnering with folks who are organizing and building power in communities. When you don't have the court, you don't have the legislature, you work on building power in your communities, and we are helping to support that work. We're helping to make sure that people know that there's power in their communities right now, and using People Power, our network of advocates around the country, to help organize and activate people to do that work. We are leaning into everything that we have. Again, we were built for this moment, and I think we're showing folks what that means.
Okay, we have time for one more question from Yolanda.
That's a big question, Yolanda. What I will share is kind of building off what Deborah talked about, the power of the ACLU network. In Nebraska, in Omaha last year, there was large-scale immigration enforcement and a raid where hundreds of Nebraskans were taken from their workplace and hidden for 2.5 days in the basement of a local immigration field office, no access to counsel. Because of a policy change, not a law change, an informal internal change to the way that ICE detains people, basically. And we were asking Yolanda that question, but in a very immediate way of what the hell are we going to do right now because people are suffering. And the power of being in the ACLU network allowed for our phenomenal lawyers who we've seen free people from unlawful immigration detention time and time again in Nebraska. But within hours, we were on a call with national expert attorneys that were litigating Guantanamo Bay and offering to review our pleadings for us. And I think that work is continuing and amplifying in a way to where we're having a coordinated litigation response. We're taking cases strategically in circuits where we think that we can make movement before going to the Supreme Court. So we're using the integrated advocacy model to use the litigation, working at state and local levels to change policies, and really just making sure people understand what is happening with the immigration legal system right now, the way the law is, and then the way the reality is affecting Nebraskans. But I think that we have to amplify that work moving forward and making sure that we're not pushing the brakes, but we're keeping the foot on the gas pedal.
Very quickly, just want to amplify something that you said and was a part of your question as well. You know, people often say, we're going to get through this, we've been through worse. And as a country, we have. But we have to recognize that not every individual is going to get through this. There's so much harm, and our folks in the immigrant community are being harmed tremendously and irreparably. And so, yes, we as a country will get through it, but we have to stop and acknowledge those who will not make it through this with us. Also important to acknowledge that this administration, their policies may be more cruel than we've seen before, but they're not the first to abuse our immigration system, right? It was broken long before. We saw it during the Biden administration. We saw it during Trump 1.0. We saw it during the Obama administration. And so, you know, lots of people have said to me, you know, after this administration is done and we go back to normal, there's no normal. Nothing will be normal. So much of what we have relied on to do the work that we do has been torn down and destroyed. So there's nothing to go back to. We need to rebuild, and our immigration system has to be a part of that. We need to build something new. What we had before was never up to the challenge. It was never what we deserved. It was never going to get us to where we needed to go. And so as we're thinking about what comes next, right now we all should be thinking about what should we be trying to build, what seeds should we be planting, so that in 3 years we can start to build the systems that we deserve, that our communities deserve, that are going to help get us to justice. And our immigration system is one of those that we have to think about how we reimagine and rebuild anew.
Thank you so much to Deborah again for joining us, to Mindy for leading this fearless group of folks that work on behalf of all Nebraskans. And with that, I will turn it back over to Adara.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, so I know that's been 2 hours, so we are wrapping things up. Before we do end the night, and I give my final reminders and thank you to you all, we do have a little surprise in store for you, Deborah. So we talked about how Clover 24 is an artist collective where art meets activism and the power of being able to tell and share the stories of lived experience. And so we wanted to gift to you a piece of art that the ACLU of Nebraska bought, and of course we will take care of handling and shipping and all those things. But it is from one of our lovely artists, our one and only Alaman Pelshaw, who is one of the co-owners of Clover 24. So please join me on stage. And while Bob grabs her wonderful piece, I just wanted to invite her to talk a little bit about the piece and her fantastic art career. So I'll pass it over to you.
Well, hi everybody. I was born and raised in Guatemala. I am a naturalized citizen of United States, and I get to do my art and live here because of our democracy and because people like you that fight for others and that welcome everybody. And that is what art have done to me. The first group of people that really welcomed me and embraced me was the art community. And I really think that the art can change lives and can make a difference. This piece was created in 2020 due to the unrest with George Floyd. I wanted to represent diversity and unity. The piece is called United We Live. And also it was the 100 years of suffrage that I know ACLU had been championed for years. And it went to be a poster for History in Nebraska, and then it went to live at the U.S. ambassador in Uganda for 3 years. Now that it's back, I am so honored that it's going to your house.